evening.
Chair Bryan and Commissioners, thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak. I just wanted to express my thanks for your patience in this whole process on reserves. It's been a long process, and I know it's been frustrating. As our only elected officials in the process, at least those of us who live in unincorporated Washington County, I really appreciate the opportunity, and so do all the other hundreds of citizens that live north of 26. We appreciate the opportunity, and we appreciate your patience, so thank you very much. It means a lot to all of us to be able to speak to you. Today I just wanted to talk about a concern about the areas that are currently proposed as urban and undesignated 8B and what we're calling 8F-S. They're both next to Helvetia Road. One is the two standing parcels, and the other is the undesignated land next to it. And I understand that most of you have already formed your positions and have said that you aren't going to change your positions, and I respect that. I just wanted to share with you some things just to make sure we all understand what it is that could or possibly happen if this happens. The first thing is that in your packet I included the productivity of land chart that is in the economic mapping study that was presented throughout the summer. Hillsborough participated in it. It was done by McKinsey Group and NAOP. But the issue there is that if you look at north of 26, the area called Sub-Area 1, that is about 642 acres, similar to the number of acres that you're proposing to be an undesignated right across from it. This sub-area has the lowest economic productivity when you compare it to the areas south of 26. Now this is using 2005 data, so the numbers today are going to be a lot lower. But as far as payroll, you're talking 22%. Compared to the south of the freeway, you're talking 40% of market value and property tax revenue. And a lot of this is due to the location of Sub-Area 1. It's pretty far out, and it's not in a great location. There's no high-tech cluster anchor now. There's no transportation options. There's no community, no amenities. Putting these buildings out in the middle of what was farmland is just not a draw for tech employers. Credence is leaving, and Intel never did build on their 92 acres. So you've got low-paid jobs in the pizza places, in the warehouses, in the churches that are in high-tech buildings. And our concern is that right across the road with urban reserves and undesignated, the goal for Hillsborough is to have that as industrial use. But we feel that the better use for Hillsborough, they'll achieve better economic value by putting their infrastructure dollars south of Highway 26, where the market values and the payroll and property tax values, you've got the infrastructure more built up down there. So they would achieve far better results by focusing south rather than going north and then west. So that is our concern for that area. If you also look at the photo I included, you can see what's happened. And this is what we're going to end up with by extending the undesignated area towards Banks and towards North Plains. We've got the tilt-up buildings, half vacant, and they are right along the freeway, and so you're going to continue for another 5 miles when you do the development along that freeway. So you've got, we had 20 kids in their 20s testifying last week to the Metro Council about the legacy for them is going to be this view along the freeway versus this view. So I'm just representing a concern that our younger generation is raising. So, and the third thing is when you designate urban reserves for Mr. Standring's property because of the interchange, the taxpayers will be paying for a higher amount to buy him out, using some taxpayers' dollars versus the lower amount that you'd be paying for if it was rural reserves. And there seems to be an issue about whether that 8B has to be urban reserves or not to do the interchange. And I know there's some controversy about that. I talked to Andy about that, so I understand there's issues. And I just wanted to thank you for your time and appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry. Let me just comment that I think it would be dishonest to say that after 2.5 years, things aren't firming up, and that some of us have reached conclusions that won't move.
I understand.
But based on some of the testimony I heard the last couple of weeks and the outreach and some of the feedback I've gotten from Metro and Metro staff, and since it's his district, in talking to Commissioner Dyke, I think there is some consideration of like 8F, BK, NP, and W, those undesignated areas, and also some to the south of the county. The reason they're undesignated is because they didn't technically meet the rural reserves. A lot of it isn't tillable because of slopes or trees and so forth. However, it's possible that we will look at that and designate it rural. There isn't really, we've been criticized by folks out of the county particularly that we've designated too much rural during the 5 mile. And I think no one's ever answered my question, what's the downside of designating these rural areas and forest lands rural? I mean, let everybody know where they stand for 50 years. But those little white fingers, I call them, that are here and there, I think it could make sense to make them rural. And that includes, I think, some of this territory that you've got on your map. There's still a couple pieces. Like, I think we want to leave a process available to banks in North Plains. They are outside of metro boundary and kind of almost as a sovereignty issue. Right. If they want to participate in the Urban Rural Reserves program, which they don't have to do, but they can go through a very extensive process on their own. Then it has to be approved by the county, then it has to go to LCDC. To move rural reserves up against their boundaries preempts their process. And their citizens ought to be able to participate. Doesn't mean they get this or that, but other than a perimeter around those two cities, I think we are going to look at converting some of those fingers of undesignated to rural.
That's good. And I think they would obviously support that. I heard the testimony that Mayor Hatcher did last week at Metro where he said he would endorse that.
Yes, so, as long as they have an area so they can have
outside of their aspirations area is what they're talking about. They needed their aspirations, but we're all talking the same thing, which is these large fingers of land.
Right.
I think we're in agreement on that. Right. So thank you.
Thank you very much.